O thou who art the Lord of lords, I testify that thou art the Lord of all creation and the educator of all beings, visible and invisible. I bear witness that thy power had encompassed the entire universe, and that the hosts of the earth can never dismay thee, nor can the dominion of all peoples and nations deter thee from executing thy purpose. I confess that thou hast no desire except the regeneration of the whole world and the establishment of the unity of its peoples and the salvation of all them that dwell therein.
O friend, in the garden of thy heart, plant not but the rose of love. O friend, in the garden of thy heart, plant not but the rose of love. In the garden of thy heart, in the garden of thy heart, in the garden of thy heart, plant not but the rose of love. Oh friend, in the garden of thy heart, plant not but the rose of love. Oh friend, in the garden of thy heart, plant not but the rose of love. In the garden of thy heart, in the garden of thy heart, in the garden of thy heart, plant not but the rose of love.
Good afternoon, dear friends. We welcome our viewers to this special presentation, and we offer loving greetings from your National Spiritual Assembly. We are assembled in this year's Baha'i National Convention in Wilmette, Illinois, with the delegates from across the country. We've come together in prayer and in a spirit of unity for two purposes. The first is the election of the 9 people who will serve as members of the National Spiritual Assembly for the coming year. The delegates have already cast their ballots, and the results will be announced later today. The convention is taking place in the Baha'i House of Worship for North America, a building dedicated to the worship of God, the oneness of all the peoples of the world, and service to humanity. As with all Baha'i elections, this one too has been free of partisanship, and each delegate has been free to vote according to his or her own private conscience. There have been no nominations, no canvassing and campaigning, no electioneering on anyone's part. Those elected will exercise no personal authority, nor enjoy any special rank or consideration as individuals. Theirs will be the duty to carefully deliberate on the requirements of the times and to do whatever they can to assist the Baha'i community members, together with their many friends, to work for the betterment of society. The second purpose of the convention is to allow the delegates to share their thoughts and concerns and make suggestions to the Assembly, and to consult together about how to build communities that will embody the values of the Baha'i faith. In these discussions, certain issues stand out. This gathering is taking place at a time of increasing turbulence in American society. Americans everywhere wonder how to build a nation that is truly just, free, and peaceful. In spite of all that brings us together as a people, a lot continues to divide us. The members of the Baha'i community are certainly dismayed by these divisions. But we also view the current difficulties here and around the world with an eye of hope. We see them as symptoms of a great historical transition into a new era of humanity's collective history. These times are the culmination of thousands of years of social progress that have taken us from the stages of infancy, childhood, and adolescence into the modern era. We are now moving through this period of adolescence with all the struggle and upheaval that that implies. And together, we need to learn to achieve our collective maturity as a human species, a maturity that is unprecedented in our experience. Whatever turmoil may lie in our immediate future, we feel confident that humanity will not only endure, humanity will prevail. But this will depend on our ability to cast away outdated habits of thought and action and to learn new ways of being and doing that will allow us to create a society characterized by spiritual and material prosperity for all. This will be a process to which all members of society can contribute. We are all learning together, and we should recognize that while everyone has perspectives to share, nobody holds a monopoly on the truth.
America was the first nation in history founded upon an idea that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Perhaps those who signed the Declaration of Independence could not fully grasp to what extent these words would ring down through the centuries and embody what came to be known as the American dream. As revolutionary as these sentiments were at the time, few of them would have seriously thought that these words would apply to those who, in that period of history, were not considered as full human beings. If this is the idea of America, then the story of America is of our struggle to live up to this noble goal, to embrace it and apply it to everyone in our society. The words of the Declaration have continued to prod our collective conscience. Over the course of 2.5 centuries, we have seen both remarkable steps forward and terrible setbacks, moments of great advances and times of catastrophe. We have seen the best and the worst of which human beings are capable. The best included the courage and tireless labor of countless souls moved to champion the cause of justice, the untold acts of devotion and love that sustained the vital bonds of community, family, and friendship, unwavering resilience and strength forged against some of the most grievous oppressions in human history, and acts of heroic sacrifice impelled by a sincere love of country and its highest ideals. Americans have also seen breathtaking feats of innovation, not the least of which is the American nation itself. Expressions of remarkable creativity in response to crisis and suffering, the fundamental goodness and decency that characterize the lives of America's people, and an ever hopeful conviction in the possibility of a perfectible union. We are still a long way from fulfilling the dream, and yet the perspective of time shows that there is reason for faith in the potential of this nation to overcome any obstacles. It is remarkable that Baha'u'llah, founder of the Baha'i faith, singled out the United States for the special destiny to lead the nations of the world in the establishment of world peace because of both material strength and spiritual leadership. Baha'i scriptures praise the ideals and material achievements of the American system of governance, but they are clear-eyed and uncompromising about the spiritual ills that have for so long plagued us. These include excessive materialism, moral laxity, and deeply ingrained racial prejudice. America's potential to demonstrate the possibility of all people living together in peace and harmony will only be realized to the extent that our spiritual progress goes hand in hand with our material advancement. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the establishment of this national governing body, the National Spiritual Assembly. During the course of many generations, we have seen at firsthand the challenges of building inclusive and loving communities. We have shared in this work with countless other people who cherish the same goals. We are aware of the difficulties in overcoming certain habits of thought and behavior, and we realize that the road ahead will be long, thorny, and tortuous. But we have also seen real progress in learning how to apply fundamental principles to the life of society in communities everywhere in this country. And this realization should prevent us from backing down. Rather, it encourages us to go with this work with full energy and faith. We Americans should not think of ourselves as apart from other peoples and nations. The tribulations now encompassing much of the world are symptoms of humanity's failure to understand and embrace the concept, all my relations. The interrelated threats of climate change, gender discrimination, extreme wealth and poverty, unfair distribution of resources, and the like, all stem from this deficiency and can never be resolved if we do not awaken to the spiritual dimension of these challenges and our dependence upon each other. The world has contracted to a neighborhood, and it is important to appreciate that what we do in America impacts not only our own country, but also the entire planet. We should also never forget that the richness of our diversity and our founding ideals of liberty and justice attract the eyes of the world to us. They will be influenced by what we achieve or fail to achieve in this regard. It is not an exaggeration to say that the cause of world peace is linked to the work we must do right here in this country.
You see, where we started 100 years ago, the object was just to understand the principles and begin to fashion an administrative organization that would reflect the spirit of the Baha'i faith itself. In fact, the spirit of all religions.
The idea that the Baha'i faith had an organization went back to Baha'u'llah. He himself ordained an administrative order that would have governing councils and a supreme governing body who he said he would always guide. This is the first time that we know in religious history that a messenger of God has ordained institutions, not individuals, but institutions, to continue their religion after their passing.
Just 18 years after the passing of Baha'u'llah, the small community of North American Baha'is, numbering barely more than 1,000 people, convened a meeting to discuss the construction of the first Baha'i temple of the Western world.
So this very special meeting that really was the seed of what would later become the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States and Canada was held on the first day of spring, the beginning of the Baha'i New Year, March 21st, 1909.
With much of the holy writing still untranslated, naturally the early Baha'is drew on the organizational processes and standards they were already familiar with.
Some of them had some misunderstandings themselves about basic Baha'i teachings. One of the worst was that women could not serve on Baha'i assemblies. That was totally wrong and in contradiction to the Baha'i principle of the equality of men and women. And the vast majority of believers were women.
One of those women was Corinne True, who visited Baha'u'llah's son Abdul-Baha in 1907. She was surprised when he asked her to oversee the building of the temple. Later, 3 men from the Baha'i Temple Unity Committee visited Abdul-Baha and asked about the temple.
His reply was, "I've given all the instructions to Mrs. True. You must ask her." So they had to abolish the men's committee and the women's committee and have one committee with both sexes.
Corinne would see Abdul-Baha 5 years later in 1912, when he arrived in the United States and spent 289 days spreading his father's teachings. And in Chicago, he laid the cornerstone for the new house of worship.
Then in 1921, Abdul-Baha fairly suddenly passed away.
Abdul-Baha's passing was devastating for the worldwide Baha'i community and for his grandson, Shoghi Effendi, who was now tasked with guiding the Baha'i world.
Now, in early 1922, the Baha'i world finds its new leader is this young man who is still a graduate student at age 24. The 1922 convention held in Chicago with representatives from all over the United States and Canada was trying to hold an election for the very first time for what would be a National Spiritual Assembly, and they had no guidance even how to do the voting. The Americans were quite accustomed to being members of civic organizations, church councils, and so forth. Even a few people had been had their toe in politics.
You can imagine that in 1922, the practices of the National Spiritual Assembly are very different than they are in 2025. It is all collective authority that is freely invested by the voters in a process that does not allow backroom deals or campaigning or nominations or any of the things that are typically associated with political processes. And they are elected in an environment of prayer and self-abnegation.
In 1925, a group of Americans and Canadians came together at a retreat center in Maine with a very noble and unique purpose: to establish, after years of struggle, a governing body that they knew would transform the world. It is absolutely marvelous to look at the photographs, the group photographs of the 1925 convention. It's predominantly women, but it is racially, socially, ethnically diverse. It's incredible because this was the opposite of what was happening in the United States as a whole.
It was a time of intense racial conflict in the United States. We had just come out of the Red Summers, where there was literally racial warfare in 37 cities throughout the United States. Now, in that environment, the American Baha'i community was just beginning to develop, and it had very specific instructions from the head of the faith that we were to build a racially integrated spiritual community. You can imagine what a challenge that was in the context of what was happening at the time.
When the votes were counted, the new 9-member assembly included 2 women, Florence Morton and Amelia Collins. 2 years later, Louis Gregory would join the assembly, and over the succeeding decades, it would continue to represent the diversity of the American continent itself.
For me, the 100th anniversary of the founding of the National Spiritual Assembly of the United States and Canada is a cause for not only great celebration, but also for reflection.
Well, you know, when you start thinking about the development of the United States and the whole idea of freedom and justice for all people, and the founding motto of E pluribus unum, out of many people, we will build one nation. And those principles have to be inspired and organized in accordance with the same spiritual understandings and spiritual principles, but they have to have practical structures and practical organizations. Now, one of the things that Shoghi Effendi talked about was that the spirit and the form could not be separated. That is because the intended aim of this religious dispensation is to bring about all of the promises of religions gone by. This is the time when the maturity of human beings is achieved and we gradually transform this fragmented, discordant, and contentious world into a flower garden of understanding and cooperation.
It is essential for us to understand the revolutionary forces now operating in the world, in virtually every sphere of human activity. 2 essential processes are underway. One is destructive in nature, while the other is integrative. Both processes, each in its own way, serve to lead humanity towards its full maturity. The destructive forces are clear everywhere. Time-honored institutions are increasingly paralyzed and powerless. Leaders at all levels find themselves unable to mend the fractures in society and to heal the despair and apathy now taking hold in many quarters. Even such things as objective truth are being called into question, which leaves us with no shared sense of reality. These forces, although they are devastating, are pointing out the faults in our current ways of thought and behavior, thus helping to clear away the barriers that block our progress. This opens a space for the second process, integration, which draws people together and provides new opportunities for cooperation and collaboration. The world is now deeply connected, for example, in the sphere of global commerce and communications, and a sense of our interdependence has emerged. The challenge for all of us is how to align ourselves individually and collectively with the process of integration. We need to work together to create a society that embodies our highest aspirations and ideals. This will help lead to an era of universal peace, which is the view that underlies every endeavor pursued by the Baha'i community. But how can we do this? To work for the common good requires us to recognize guiding spiritual principles that lie at the heart of our reality. The foundation is the recognition that there is a moral order to the universe. This idea has fallen out of fashion in some circles. But if there is no moral order, then every person and interest group works to gain the most for themselves, whatever the cost to others. Other guiding principles exist, but the first and most important is the oneness of humanity. We are all one species, one kindred, one family. Prejudices of any kind have no basis in reality. All of us, of whatever background or gender, deserve to be treated with dignity, to participate in the life of society, and to be given the opportunity to develop whatever talents we possess for our own progress and for the advancement of civilization.
So June of 2022, there was like this camp, and it was sent out for like Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina. It was a 12-day camp. It was the first that we ever had that was that big. And over those 12 days, about 130 or near 150 youth were able to participate. So at first in the camps, people were kind of in their geographic regions, which also meant like racial like groupings. And it was kind of becoming noticeable. You know, it's natural for people to be with their friends, but I think when we were noticing that it was also along like racial lines, at first we were like, it's a Baha'i camp, so we're trying to figure out how can we apply Baha'u'llah's revelation even to like our social spaces when we're eating dinner, or like who we're doing our arts with.
By really the third day, the tutors came together to reflect, and we're like, what can we do to address this? It was very obvious. And we really took some special initiatives. So we reflected really on the story about Louis Gregory, and how can we really think about giving the seat of honor to the Black youth who are coming. And that, I think that really inspired all of the tutors to really think about, it was a really shift in thinking. The tutors were like, okay, we need to really shift our own thinking as well, and then what conversation can we have with our participants in our study circles.
And I think that by the middle of the camp, more and more people were starting to like branch out and be with people from different backgrounds, different localities. And I think a big part of it too was like our outings. I think in the middle of the week we got to go to the Civil Rights Center, and on that trip a lot of people were kind of like mingling and like walking in groups with like different people that they hadn't really interacted much with. Just started branching out by that time with the support of like the tutors being like kind of encouraging people to like branch out, talk to new people, thinking about the implications of a space that's segregated by race, and thinking about how that wasn't necessarily the culture we were trying to build.
The teachings of the religions of the world are a great source of spiritual knowledge. Many people have rejected the concept of religion, and the reasons for this are understandable. Religious fanaticism has been one of the greatest curses of history, and it continues to exercise pernicious effects everywhere. Yet Baha'u'llah challenges us to understand the nature of true religion. Religion is not, in its essence, a mere set of creeds, dogmas, and rituals. It does not cling blindly to traditions, nor is it in contradiction to rational thought. It is not an excuse to condemn or persecute others. In its highest form, religion is a force of bringing people together in the common good. Baha'u'llah's teachings offer a single transcendent theme, that of oneness, that there is one God, that there is one human family with all of us his children, and that religion in reality is one, that humanity's religious history in all its diversity offers a single story of humanity's encounter with the divine source. The essential spiritual principles of all the great religions, however variously expressed, are one. All foster a sense of transcendent meaning. All remind us of our nature as spiritual beings and of the path that makes for a life well lived. The spiritual history of humanity is a love story. It is the story of God's love for humanity and the corresponding love inspired in the hearts of human beings. It is the story of the love that this engenders in their hearts for all of God's creation, and especially for our fellow human beings. While the various religions speak to the mystical relationship between the divine and the individual, they also counsel us to recognize that fulfilling our own potential requires that we seek to serve others. They see the value and sacredness in every human being and urge us to love others as we would ourselves. They recognize that the inner condition of our hearts affects our acts, our relationships with others, and our impact in the world, whether for good or evil. We find in faith the inspiration and the inner assurance that empowers us to serve our neighbors, to work sacrificially for the common weal, to pursue knowledge and understanding, and to strive for a just and peaceful society. At this time in history, when the interdependence of the world is so clear, when a universal set of values is greatly needed, these eternal principles gain even greater significance. Such values must not only shape the way in which individuals treat each other, they must also shape the ways we conceive of community and operate society's institutions. The Baha'is believe that the history of humanity is really the story of one vast process, whose ultimate goal is the coming together of the entire human race. But this unity does not mean uniformity. Rather, it will be a unity in diversity, united in our essential values and aspirations, yet infinitely diverse in our cultural expressions. We do not believe that the road forward will be an easy one. It will involve ceaseless work, sacrifice, and struggle. To achieve it requires a world-embracing vision, one that inspires our consciousness and brings us together in solidarity with all people.
The longest story in our history is the relationship between humanity and God.
Individually or collectively, we explore this relationship through expressions that reach beyond ourselves.
Though our practices may differ,
it has always been one continuous story.
The well-being of mankind, its peace and security, are unattainable unless and until its unity is firmly established.
If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it.
Indeed, God does not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves.
How good and pleasant it is when brothers live together in unity.
Thousands of candles can be lit from a single flame, and the life of a candle will not be shortened.
A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me.
Look and listen for the welfare of the whole people, and have always in view not only the present, but also the coming generations.
It is time to remember who we Americans aspire to be as a people. This moment beckons us to a renewed commitment to realize the ideal of e pluribus unum, out of many, one, the very aspiration upon which America was founded. It is not enough simply to believe in our hearts that we are all equal. This awareness creates the moral imperative to act and to view all aspects of our personal, social, and institutional lives through the lens of justice. It implies social innovations more profound than anything we have yet achieved. And it requires the participation of Americans of every race, creed, and background. For only through such inclusive participation can we achieve unity. It is one thing to protest the injustices as they arise, but it is a far more profound challenge to create an effective framework for justice. Our efforts can only succeed when we learn to build relationships with each other based on sincere friendship, regard, and trust, which in turn can illuminate our institutions and communities. An essential element of the process will be honest and truthful discourse about the road we have taken to where we are now. We must, for example, build the capacity to truly hear and acknowledge the voices of those who have directly suffered from the effects of racial prejudice. It is critical to understand our present reality and how we got here so that we can move forward. This capacity should manifest itself in our schools, the media, and other civic arenas, as well as in our work and personal relations. This should not end with words, but lead to meaningful, constructive action. Significant efforts are already underway to learn how to create models of unity in neighborhoods and communities throughout the nation. Baha'is have been persistently engaged in such efforts for decades. Again, the aim is not unity in sameness, it is unity in diversity, recognizing that everyone has a part to play in contributing to the betterment of society, and that true prosperity, material and spiritual, will be available to us all to the degree that we live up to this standard of inclusiveness. We should discover what helps to make a difference and why. We should share this learning throughout the country as a means of inspiring and assisting the work of others. There is nothing more persuasive than the force of example. Fundamental changes in social attitude will be achieved if men and women of goodwill can see others attempting successfully to give these ideals practical expression in individual and community life. If we do this, we could soon find ourselves in the midst of a fundamental transformation. A new society will be based upon our much higher potential for collaboration, reciprocity, and human progress. We all understand how members of a healthy family depend upon each other and provide mutual support in relationships built on trust. This is no less true for a healthy community and for an entire nation. Let us not lose this opportunity. Will we commit to the process of forming a more perfect union? Will we be guided by the better angels of our nature to choose the course of wisdom, of courage, and of unity? Can we become the beloved community that includes and uplifts all? Will we choose to truly become that city upon a hill to serve as an inspiration to all humanity?
Do you know where you are?
Do you know what has brought you here?
Do you know what comes next?
For too long, we've been divided by things we didn't choose, by old prejudices built into how we see and how we live.
But are we doing enough to change it?
Are we nourishing every population that makes up this country? Or still convinced that only one limb deserves nutrients, then wondering why the body struggles to move forward?
Racism is a profound deviation from the standard of true morality. It deprives a portion of humanity of the opportunity to cultivate and express the full range of their capability and to live a meaningful and flourishing life while blighting the progress of the rest of humankind.
It cannot be rooted out by contest and conflict. It must be supplanted by the establishment of just relationships among individuals, communities, and institutions of society that will uplift all and will not designate anyone as other.
The change required is not merely social and economic, but above all, moral and spiritual.
We cannot know what to do until we know what story we are a part of. If we accept that there is an arc to human history, a goal, then the question is where we go from here and how we get there. Because we have not yet achieved a perfect society, we must approach efforts to progress forward with a willingness to learn. We must join hands to help each other to build the capacity to create the society we want to see. Together, let us learn to apply the principle of oneness through practical engagement and experience. The Baha'i writings say, peace must first be established among individuals until it leadeth in the end to peace among nations. Wherefore, O ye Baha'is, strive ye with all your might to create through the power of the word of God, genuine love, spiritual communion, and durable bonds among individuals. This is your task. This means that social change begins at the grassroots, as friends, families, and neighbors begin a process of creating relationships characterized by loving fellowship, service, and a sense of common purpose. As we do this, we learn to embrace ever larger numbers of people until entire communities begin to advance together. Over time, we increasingly demonstrate the power of unity. As communities emerge that embody unity and peace, communities where racism, otherness, and prejudice have no part. These can serve as havens of hope for all people. But by havens, we do not mean hideouts. These are not places where we try to escape from the difficulties of life. Rather, they are sources of inspiration and strength that provide us with the resources we need to work together towards our common aspirations. Such havens, large and small, cultivate environments in which children can be raised, untainted by any form of racial, national, or religious prejudice. They champion the full equality of women and men in the affairs of the community. They provide programs of education, transformative in their effects, open to all and encompassing both the material and spiritual aspects of life. Such havens give birth to social action as a way to remedy the numerous ills afflicting humanity and to empower each person to help build a new world. Such people develop capacity to engage those around us, regardless of creed, culture, class, or ethnicity, in conversations about how to bring about spiritual and material well-being through systematic application of spiritual principles. In their experience working in hundreds of neighborhoods throughout the country, the Baha'is and those working with us have seen the value of a nonpartisan, non-divisive, consultative approach to problem solving. The Baha'i approach, we believe, demonstrates how we might build institutional capacity to govern in a spirit of service, to resolve conflicts, and to build unity, creating an electoral process which is an expression of peace. In contrast to the world where there is vitriol and even violence that often accompanies elections in the wider society. Youth face particular challenges in these times. They are experiencing an epidemic of loneliness, anxiety, and depression. Some observers do not have faith in the potential of young people to make mature and effective decisions. Others are dismissive, focusing on the challenges youth face without acting to foster their potential. Yet we have seen that when youth internalize the principle of oneness, they develop a longing to serve their society. They become inspired to make a difference not only in their neighborhood, but in the wider society in ways that are truly impactful. Transformative change becomes the work of their generation and the work of all generations to come.
And indeed, when youth rise to meet this calling, their impact is unmistakable. Across the country, young people are embracing their role as builders of a new society. In families, neighborhoods, classrooms, community centers, and even on national stages, their contributions are gaining momentum. In the Baha'i faith, youth are not only seen as leaders of tomorrow, but as protagonists of change today. Through meaningful conversations, service projects, and a growing network of friendships rooted in spiritual principles. They are actively engaged in building a more unified and just society. One powerful expression of this movement are youth conferences, gatherings where young people come together to reflect, consult, and make plans to release the society-building powers of the Baha'i faith.
I decided to come to the youth conference because I wanted to meet new people, and especially people my age. And I already know amazing, wonderful people from the past times that I've come to big gatherings like these ones.
And it is a conference with the hope of increasing capacity to engage in meaningful conversations.
During the conference, we've really talked about the power that youth have in this day and age, about how our unique gifts are helping us bring humanity forward.
At the youth conference, we've been learning about Baha'u'llah's vision for humanity and youth's essential role in bettering our communities, and what capacities do youth need to build in order to actually effectively serve their communities. So it's been really interesting hearing all the participants' input and hearing about their personal experience about, okay, I see this need in my community and I want to address it in this way.
So far at the conference, I've been really enjoying myself. I find it really easy to socialize and make friends because the people are so welcoming and kind. They come up to you, they saying, "Hi, what's your name?" It's just such a welcoming community, and it's just you want to be friends with everyone and they want to be friends with you.
We've talked about topics such as universal peace. We've talked about how can we as youth empower other youth to strive for building a better community, more positive community, a community based on principles like truthfulness, based on principles like love. And it's been so great to be able to pick each other's brains and get to talk so much about how we can build better communities.
Really impressed by the sheer energy that I feel people are bringing across many different paths of lives and backgrounds.
I think on planning, we all had this deep desire to anyone who wanted to walk through the door would be able to walk through and feel a safe space. And so there was all these tiny little logistical things we had to think about, name tags and foods and dietary restrictions, location, how can people travel, and how can we actually create a vibrant community that we're studying about in this environment? And now seeing it all come to life and seeing all the youth smiles and laughter and singing songs with them, it made all the consultation that went into planning the conference feel so rich, and it was so exciting to see the results of it. So I was really happy that people seemed to be happy about the conference.
I had no expectations. I only know one fellow member who seemed very engaging, and when he said, "Do you want to go to a conference?" I was very open to see people similar, like-minded as him. So I had the impression of meeting people that were engaged, kind, welcoming, but also willing to learn. I think other religions, they talk about this is what we're doing as a religion, this is what we're reading, but you don't have them go into different smaller groups and talk about what is the gap that we're looking to fill from your knowledge, what is the gap between another person looking to fill in their knowledge, and how do we come together. So I think as a non-Baha'i, so that was something new and surprising for me to see today.
Here I'm learning about, right now we're talking about unity and stuff, and we're actually working on a project right now. How you can start off as a seed and then it grows into a lot of these human virtues, and then that tree, an apple, the seeds drop, and then those seeds are new people. When you share the ideas, you plant a new seed and that person grows and they drop a seed and it keeps going.
So far, what we've been learning about in my group specifically is the difference between a material life and society, and then a life with material and spiritual.
Let your heart burn with loving kindness for all who may cross your path. We just painted that one, and then I was thinking about that one all day because I was oh, it's just such a sweet quote to be just be have as much love as possible for everybody around you.
I think youth can change the world, and we have such a big responsibility and such a big role, but also we come at it with so much energy that, it's almost nothing can stop us as youth.
Today's media environment often projects the most extreme views. These voices play upon our fears and insecurities to capture our attention and enlist us in support of this or that cause. This inevitably is presented as good versus evil, those who believe in higher values against those who seek to destroy our way of life. But we should not allow this tactic to blind us to the essential goodness of the people in this country. Most of us sincerely want the right things for ourselves and for everyone. We should not fall into the trap of thinking of some groups as our allies and others as our enemies. Rather, we need to meet everyone on the grounds of good faith and of confidence in our ability to find common cause as we work together to build a brighter future. These same negative forces can create, if we are not careful, a sense of impotence and helplessness in the face of staggering challenges. But we must not forget the irresistible power of truth, of love, and of unity to create the world anew. Together, let us work toward the prosperity of all, recognizing that the welfare of each of us is tied to the welfare of all of us. Let us behave as loyal citizens who avoid extreme partisanship and the contest for worldly power. Instead, we can focus on transcending differences and harmonizing perspectives through a consultative approach to problem solving. Let us emphasize qualities and attitudes such as trustworthiness, cooperation, and forbearance that are building blocks of a stable social order. Let us champion rationality and science as essential for human progress. Let us advocate tolerance and understanding, and with the inherent oneness of humanity uppermost in our minds, view everyone as a potential partner to collaborate with and overcome historic distance or hostility between groups. We can be conscious of the forces of materialism at work around us, with our eyes wide open to the many injustices that persist in the world. Yet we can be equally clear-sighted about the creative power of unity and humanity's capacity for altruism. We can appreciate the essential purpose of religion to transform hearts and overcome distrust. And so, with complete confidence in what the future holds, we can labor to cultivate the conditions in which progress can occur. The work of change is the work of the heart. We can share our beliefs liberally with each other, remaining respectful of the freedom of conscience of every soul, and never impose our own beliefs on anyone. And while we would not pretend to have discovered all the answers, we can be clear about what we have learned and what we still need to learn. In nearly 2.5 centuries, we have seen a nation brought into being in reaction to the forces of tyranny, tried and tested in the blood of civil war, defended on countless battlefields, and strengthened through the determination and sacrifices of unnumbered souls who risked their all in the name of equality and civil rights. Surely what we have achieved so far shows that with God's help, there is no challenge beyond our capacity to address. The story continues. We appeal to all who aspire to be practitioners of peace, although keenly aware of the trials that we must face before we achieve our destination. If we act together, we can be assured of ultimate victory. We extend to everyone the hand of friendship, of common endeavor, of shared service, of collective learning, and advance as one.
Ultimately, the power to transform the world is affected by love. Love originating from the relationship with the divine. Love ablaze among members of a community. Love extended without restriction to every human being.
This divine love, ignited by the Word of God, is disseminated by enkindled souls through intimate conversations that create new susceptibilities in human hearts, open minds to moral persuasion, and loosen the hold of biased norms and social systems so that they can gradually take on a new form, in keeping with the requirements of humanity's age of maturity.
You are channels for this divine love. Let it flow through you to all who cross your path. Infuse it into every neighborhood and social space in which you move, to build capacity to canalize the society-building power of Baha'u'llah's revelation.
There can be no rest until the destined outcome is achieved.
From the Baha'i Scriptures, a prayer for America. Let us pray. O thou kind Lord, this gathering is turning to Thee. These hearts are radiant with Thy love. These minds and spirits are exhilarated by the message of Thy glad tidings. O God, let this American democracy become glorious in spiritual degrees, even as it has aspired to material degrees, and render this just government victorious. Confirm this revered nation to upraise the standard of the oneness of humanity, to promulgate the most great peace, to become thereby most glorious and praiseworthy among all the nations of the world. O God, this American nation is worthy of Thy favors and deserving of Thy mercy. Make it precious and near to Thee, through Thy bounty and bestowal.